just happened to have a couple of sleeves to block today, so I was going to just do a little video for you and show you how to do some wet blocking. There are several different methods of blocking that you can do. This is my personal favorite, to do wet blocking. And what I've done already is I put my two sleeves in a sink full of warm soapy water and let them soak for a while. I let them soak overnight. You don't really need to let them soak quite that long, but at least a good hour or two, just to make sure that they get good and soaked. And then what I did was I laid them on a towel and rolled up the towel and then pushed as much water out of them as I could. So when you get ready to block, they're going to look like this in the towel. And then what you're going to need is some kind of blocking board. You can use a bed or some towels or something like that if you don't have a blocking board. This one my husband just made for me. This is 2 pieces of foam board, and there's a piece of fabric glued to it, and then he drew a 1-inch grid on it for me so I could line things up. And then you need some straight pins, and you might also need a tape measure depending on what you're blocking. Sometimes when you're blocking lace, really you're just going to block it as big as you can possibly get it to really stretch out the lace work and make it show really well. I'm blocking a sleeve, so it needs to be blocked to certain dimensions. So if that's true on your pattern, it'll give you a schematic that shows you the measurements for the size you need to block your piece to. So my particular piece needs to be blocked to certain sizes. And another thing you need to keep in mind that you need to think about at the very beginning of your project is the yarn that you're going to use, because only a natural fiber is going to block. If you have anything with acrylic in it, then it's not going to block at all. So you need to look at your pattern and see if it's something that is going to need to be blocked. And if so, then you need to use a natural fiber. This particular fiber is 100% superwash merino, so it will block. This piece has a little bit of ribbing on it here at the bottom. This is the cuff of the sleeve. And you don't want to block this part. You want to leave this part all nice and squished up, because the purpose of this is for it to stretch and hug around your wrist. So that part we're going to leave alone and kind of squish it up as much as we can. Then I'm going to look at my schematic here, and I'm supposed to block the bottom of the sleeve to 9.5 inches. So get out my little handy dandy tape measure here, and I'm going to need to stretch it to get to that point. Try not to stretch my ribbing. And you'll find that as you do this, you're going to adjust it and adjust it and adjust it until you get it just right. So we'll probably need to come back and adjust this just a little bit here. And then what I'm going to do is look at my length. And my length here is going to be 18 inches. So this is where the grid comes in really handy. So that's going to be about right there. So I know that 18 inches is across this line right here. So don't go in and put in all your pins at once, because like I said, you're going to really need to do a lot of adjusting back and forth. Okay, I have some increases that start right here. So I need to make sure, okay, there's not a specific length. If there were, you would need to make sure that this length between where your increases start and the bottom of your piece is correct, but I don't have a particular length, it's just for the entire piece. So then my other measurement is this measurement right here. So that is 11.5 inches. It's actually pretty close. Just in a little bit. And sometimes you have to squish it up, and sometimes you have to pull it out. Okay, so that's 11.5. Okay, so these are my dimensions. So now what I want to do is go around and just sort of make sure that everything is even and not stretched out and wonky looking. I don't have a measurement for this piece right here, so I'm just going to kind of wing it. And the other thing you'll notice on these pieces is that I left my tails really long. This one is probably a lot longer than it needs to be. But the reason that I left these, and this is where I finished the piece, and I left this piece so long so that I can use this to seam up my sleeve. So that makes it a little bit easier when you get ready to seam your sleeve together or whatever your piece is. And then what you do is you just go around and make sure you've got your edge nice and flat, and put pins every so often. And I like to use these lines to make sure I'm getting the piece pretty straight. But when you go to seam your piece, this is going to make it so much easier when your piece is blocked, so you can really see your stitches better, and the piece will come together much better. So it's generally a good idea to go ahead and block your pieces and then seam the entire project, rather than putting the whole project together and then blocking it. But you might want to block it again after you've put it together, just depending on your preference or how you think the piece looks. But that's the general premise of it, and then I'll just go on and do the other side here and pin that. And then what I do is leave it on the board and let it dry for however long it takes, usually a day or two. You know, if you put it in a nice warm place in your laundry room or something like that, it'll dry pretty fast. And then when I go around and I take all these pins out, the piece is going to look just like this. It's going to be nice and flat. My stitches are going to be nice and easy to see on the edges, and then it'll be ready for seaming together. And that's it. That's wet blocking. Thought I'd just come back and show you what the piece looks like when it's all pinned. What I actually did was pin both the sleeves together because I don't have room on the board to do them separately, but also because that way I can make sure that they are blocked to the exact same size, so that when I put the sweater together that they'll look the same. So once you've got all your pins in, I go back and check my measurements again to make sure that I've got all my measurements right, and if they're not, you can easily do some adjusting. And you also want to make sure that all your edges are nice and even. You know, you don't want anything like blocked out there like that, because you know that's not going to work when you go to seam it together. So you want to make sure you have all your edges nice and even. And I will leave this on the board for a couple days, let it get good and dry, and then when I take all the pins out, it'll look just like this. It won't move at all. And I should also tell you that these sleeves are for the Girl Friday sweater, which is a sweater that I am currently making. It's been a really good project. Good project for somebody who hasn't seamed a project together before. It's a good learning project. The pattern is pretty easy to remember and that sort of thing. The pattern is also well written, which is helpful. And you can find that pattern on knitty.com, Girl Friday Sweater. And the yarn that I used is actually Knitwitch yarn. This is our DK weight yarn. The colorway is Apollo. And you can find that on our website at knitwitch.com. I really like working with this yarn. This DK weight is a very easy yarn to use. And I actually... it's not the yarn that was called for in the pattern, of course, so I did have to do a little bit of adjustment with my gauge, but anytime you want to change yarn with your pattern, you can do that. You just need to do a yarn swatch and do a little math calculation, and luckily this one came out pretty well. So that's it.